Hello, this is Dave Crawford. I'm the VP of Inpatient and Residential Services. I'm here today to do a training on supervisor and leadership in the bedded programs. It's kind of a topic near and dear to my heart. I do believe in our bedded programs and in all our programs, but in our bedded programs specifically, we do need strong leadership, strong point person. And I think CASA as a whole is very good at who they recruit for that. In the bedded programs, I probably recruited you directly if you were taking this. And in that case, I know that you are tried and true and have been through the hellfire. With that said, I'm going to get started. What is leadership in our bedded programs? Leadership refers to an individual's ability to influence, motivate, and enable others to contribute to the organizational success. Influence and inspiration separate leaders from managers, not power and control. And I think that's something that I feel like not necessarily anyone that I've worked with, but that I've seen in the past. I mean, we've probably all worked at places where the supervisor was somebody's cousin, or the supervisor maybe had some skills and was promoted, but leadership's not necessarily their thing. And they kind of just want to sit there and point fingers and delegate. And on top of it, though, with no follow-up or no making sure something's getting done. And then instead of like stepping up and doing what's needed, which I believe is a key leadership thing, then it kind of gets messy, unorganized, nothing gets done. And as an employee that's worked in a setting like that, that gets very frustrating. And I know that when I got promoted to leadership, I mean, that was kind of my thing. I thought of like all the negative attributes of past supervisors I had, and I just tried not to be that person. And I try to be a person that inspires people to believe in what we do because I believe in it, that's passionate on what we do because I'm passionate and I want to share that, and kind of just inspire people to be part of our mission. And our mission is to save lives. And on top of that, I want to support my staff. I want to teach my staff, and I want us to be cohesive in a way that works. And I think a key indicator of what you're doing, if it's working, is program function. I mean, if your programs function and you can see clearly that things are working as they should, you are probably doing a good job, and you probably have some great staff. While there are many leadership styles and strategy, and some that even will work in other settings, I'm only going to focus on the ones I know have to be utilized in the bedded programs. And I'll get into them in a minute. But what I mean by that is basically like, I mean, laissez-faire. I'm just going to jump on that one. I'm going to probably touch on it again in a second. But like a laissez-faire leadership style, it is one that I've actually been part of an outpatient team that had a laissez-faire leadership style. And we had some strong clinicians and it worked. I've also been part of a team where there was a laissez-faire leadership style and it didn't quite work so well because the supervisor just didn't give any clear direction. People took advantage of that. Maybe some people might have not necessarily known their job because the leader kind of withheld information and didn't share to try to make your team stronger. It kind of trickled over to like service delivery. So I think laissez-faire can work in some settings, in some managerial offices, maybe in our intensive residential inpatient programs, and even now the 819, that is not going to fly because they need direction. And they need it for a couple of reasons. I think they need it because it's not just clinicians. I mean, we're dealing on education and training experience from high school diploma and never worked a day in the field to master levels clinicians. And I think B, it can get chaotic and there could be crisis. And when we're emotionally involved in things, it's not always the best time to make objective decisions. And us as the supervisors, and might be a step back from that hands-on interaction, might need to provide that feedback, direction, where to go from there, and kind of tell people what to do on occasion. You know what I mean? I know that's something that maybe not everybody's comfortable with, but that is what leadership is. That is what management is. So we have to get comfortable with it. And as a skill, I think it's developed. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And it's all about delivery. You can say things to people that, I mean, I try to practice in my mind a little bit if I got to have an uncomfortable conversation and kind of think of the best way to come at that to not trigger a person and not make them feel too defensive. And sometimes maybe kind of promoting that little bit of defensiveness, like what the hell's going on, that might be needed. So it is kind of like how you approach and how you come at things. I think that makes a lot of difference. So unlike other treatment settings, clients refer to better programs in most cases because they need structure, behavioral observations, and in essence, to be under a microscope for in-depth analysis of assessment behavior, symptom, and criteria. And in reality, the environment itself is a treatment intervention. However, this also means us as leaders and the rest of our staff, we're under the same microscope, and we all see each other, and we all see each other in high pressure situations, and kind of like the true character comes out a little bit more. And again, if you were watching this video, I probably recruited you from the programs, and you have worked in them, so you know what I'm talking about. I mean, you kind of get to see people's true natures in our setting, just like the clients. We live with them all day, every day. We work together in close proximity all day, every day in hard situations. And on top of that, the clients are watching every little thing we do, and that comes out as well. And it's just, that's what it is and what we signed up for. And I know I love it, and I assume you love it as well. It can also be high stress environments, so we need to lead in ways that are crystal clear and that are crystal clear to understand and easier to follow. So like if our staff is second guessing and not quite sure where we're headed, they might not follow us quickly. And if we're not consistent and we're not like kind of across the board in what we do, it can have an effect because we're sending a message that we're indecisive and that we don't really know what we're doing. So there's a saying I've always liked, fake it till you make it. This can apply sometimes in our setting. We need to be pace setters at times. We need to be coaches. We need to show up and step up and support our staff so they think we are worth following. And we need to be mindful to even make a show at times of doing something hard or unpleasant, as hard and unpleasant things do happen in our setting. And people are more receptive to do something as if they know we're not just asking because we don't want to do it. You know, I have teams I work closely with as their supervisor in the past, and they even know I will do the unpleasant thing. I know we're just coming to the end of a COVID-19 pandemic. And when COVID first hit, we had to do a lot of extra cleaning up still. And like, I made it a point, I cleaned the bathroom. We all had to step up and kind of do some extra lifting. I cleaned the bathrooms because it was the most unpleasant job. I knew it was the thing that people weren't really going to be like, whoo, let me do that one. And it didn't take a lot of time. It was a little nasty, but that's why I did it. You know what I mean? I also made sure that kind of if we were dealing with an outbreak or if we were dealing with a positive client that, you know, I would always put all my protective wear on and whatnot, but I was part of that. I didn't just sit in the office and expect them to do all the risky and hard stuff on their own, because that's not leadership and that's not someone that someone wants to follow. You know what I mean? So what won't work in embedded programs? These are the leadership styles. Laissez-faire leaders. We already got into that a little bit. So they have an attitude of trust and reliance on their employees. And that is a great thing that we should draw on, but it can't be our primary leadership style. They don't micromanage or don't get too involved. They don't give too many instructions or guidance. Like democratic a leadership style, it may seem that, did I skip one? I think I got rearranged here. Oh, I did, but we're still going to go on with it. They don't so like democratic, it may seem like it should work, and in other settings it might, but in our better, there needs to be a strong point, for instance. It's not about the person or abilities we are leading. It's about crisis management. A large part of what we do in our environment can be stressful. So people may look to avoid things a little bit more, or dealing with something directly might be too emotionally involved. And therefore we might need to give some direction on that and said where to go. Because if we're just leaving it for them to figure out, most likely they're not going to, because again, a laissez-faire is kind of behind the scenes, not really hands-on. And in that case, that person might not feel very supported, and that person might not feel like, what the hell, if they don't care, why should I care? And we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see a lot of things not getting done. So laissez-faire, I do like, we should just avoid that. You know what I mean? Like, we can have the mindset that we have that reliance and trust on our staff. And I think that a team and key people will present themselves that you can, but it's still good to even double check on them because they get busy and they forget. And I know that sometimes, like I think anyways, I don't even know this for sure. I feel like people might be uncomfortable with that. I'm okay with someone reminding me. And most of the 18 people that work well for me, they are too. And they kind of appreciate that. You know, if they're supposed to be doing something and I know I had that crazy day, that they understand. I want to check, hey, did you get that done? Because I'll also, if they didn't, and I know they had a crazy day, I'm gonna help them do it. You know what I mean? So like, it's not a negative thing. You know what I mean? Servant leadership. That is another one I have seen, and this one never works. Servant leaderships are leaders who focus on meeting the needs of the team. So that sounds good, right? It sounds like you want to be supportive of meeting your team. And as leaders, we are going to do that. But I'm talking, this is your primary leadership style. Servant leaderships can sadly lead to more focus on the individuals, and individuals means employees, with less focus on the actual goals of the organization. As a consequence, Things get like disorganized, things get messy, things get kind of all about the staff and all about, I mean, I took the leadership training in Rochester for the clinical foundations, and I remember the woman Julie teaching it. She even said, like, you have to be careful because our staff, our clinicians, our clinical staff, they're not the ones in treatment. You know what I'm saying? Of course, we want to be there for them. I've had staff that gone through divorces and deaths and hard times. Of course, I'm going to support that. But what I'm talking about is like that. It can't be like, oh, this triggers me all the time, or this, and that. And I know it can vary. We got a peer, that's a different thing. But even still with them, it's just like they're not the ones in treatment. Our clients are. You know what I mean? And it comes down to, can they do the job? You know what I mean? And again, I don't want to be cold or sound cold, but like really, it can't be all about the staff, because if we go down that path, it's a slippery slope, and it's one that I just think we'll never get control of. And I also think it gets into people pleasing, and I've seen leaders get taken advantage of that, and I've seen schedules get changed, for instance, in a very chaotic way, that because the person you want to, oh, I want my to come Monday through Friday days. Now we got 20 people working Monday through Friday days, or I want to work 312s, and I want to work this shift instead of that. And we're, you know, when I'm hiring staff, and if you ever sat in on me with an interview, you probably heard me say it. Our daily schedule is built on our staffing schedule. We ain't changing that damn thing. You know what I'm saying? Because if you want to like change your schedule, you're going to have to wait until someone comes up and that position comes available, because we have groups, we have meals, we have people like slotted to do these specific tasks. And just by willy-nilly changing things all the time, that stuff's most likely not going to get done. So if we want that stuff and we our operation run smoothly, we can't be like that. You get what I'm saying? Same with kind of switching positions, kind of with doing things out of scope of practice. Like we can't just be there and kind of let staff do whatever they want to do. You know what I mean? It's a dangerous thing. Servant leadership is known to take a long time to establish, and it doesn't work in all organizations. Transactional leaders, they monitor followers carefully to enforce rules, reward success, and punish failures. They do not, however, act as catalysts for growth and change within an organization. Instead, they are focused on maintaining things as they are and enforcing current rules and expectations. I mean, that's a dangerous one. I think the one true constant in life, and I am taking this quote, I don't know whose source is, the one true constant in this life is change. Things change, policy change, OASIS change rules, CASA changes things, new things get rolled out. You can't be so rigid that we're just fighting to maintain the status quo. You kind of got to roll with that, and you got to adapt. And you also have to be selective, because every little thing that we get an email about, that doesn't mean we got to do a whole program design. You know what I mean? It's so like, you got to be mindful of that and not just like overthink things and kind of take it in a different direction, but also you have to be willing to make changes when changes are needed. You know what I'm saying? Coercive leaders demand immediate compliance. So like just basically tyrannical, and that kind of goes into the autocratic one. They're very similar. You know what I mean? It's just do as I say because I said it. I mean, who the hell likes that? Come at me like that. I don't think I mean, obviously, it's your supervisor, you're not going to get an argument, curse them out, but I mean, it might lead there someday. So you might take that for a little bit, but eventually you'll be like, who the hell is this person? Just always making these weird demands on me. You know what I mean? Bureaucratic leaderships, whose leaders focus on every single rule. Now, I do want to be careful there, because the rules are very important and consistency is very important, but also it's just, I mean, there's some hard rules. OASIS says that we have to meet with our clients at least one time a week. That's a hard rule. We have to be that has to be followed. You understand? But then there's program rules like packages to drop off and phone policies and stuff like that, where we need to be rigid. But let's say our phone policy, we just rolled out made a change in it and something new. So that's the rule now. And as it's going, we keep seeing that it's triggering a lot of people and getting a lot of people angry, because like maybe we didn't really think about how their people might be at it's working hours for a lot of people. Now, I do want to say in these things, we're never going to make everybody happy, but I'm saying this is really causing problems. The bureaucratic might just stick to it and be like, that's the rule, that's what it is, we ain't changing nothing, where we need to be like, well, that's not, it's more having a negative effect than the effect that we planned for. So let's kind of make some tweaks, see where we can adjust that. You get what I'm saying? Democratic leaders. So this was where I got the laissez-faire one mixed up. again, you would think this is a good one. I do think it's a good one. You want a democratic society. You want people to be heard. You want people to have a voice. Again, we're talking about primary focus on leadership style, though. We're not talking about when appropriate. I mean, when appropriate, we want people's buy-in. We want collaboration. We want people's input. But also, you get into this thing where you got, what's the expression? Too many Indians is not enough chiefs or something like that. It's something like that. I feel that might be a little discriminatory and not politically correct, but I'm still going with it. And that is when that happens there. So you want to avoid that a little bit because, again, with the vetted programs, we need a strong point person and we need everybody's going to have input. Everybody's going to want to do things a certain way. But if we want to function, especially on that core stuff, you know what I mean? Like it just has to be what it is. So you can have your opinions. We could talk about them. I'll explain to you why, or maybe we tried that in the past, it didn't work and all that. And on the real though, this is not a vote on this area. You know what I mean? There will be things that it is, but I'm saying again, this is a primary leadership style. So leadership styles should not be a rigid thing, and they should draw from multiple styles and strategy. I think of it very much. I mean, we were all counselors at one time, and we weren't just like one kind of strategy or approach. We had a toolbox and we drew from it. That's how I think about leadership styles. Like you should draw from everyone that fits you, that you can work with, and when it's appropriate. So authoritative, these are the good ones. I'm going to go over the good ones now that I think that you kind of need to be if you are a leader in the vetted program. And each one of us are different, and each one of us, these things might fit a little bit better. But again, it's at least knowing these strategies and kind of theory behind them and what the goals are so that if we see an opportunity to use them, we can. So authoritative leader provides direction and vision. They approach projects and initiatives from a position of confidence. They have a clear vision of what success looks like, and they give their team members clear direction and construction feedback, and they work together towards organizational goals. They define the purpose, they set the parameters, they engage with their employees, they explain the reasons. They don't just say because I said so, they say because this is a reg change that came down the line and we just has to happen, you know what I mean? Or, and even if you agree or disagree, but like, this is what's going to, you know, we got to do it, you know what I mean? And I do think people respond to that. I think that it's a genuine approach. And I think that if you're honest with people and you explain the why, it goes a long way. So, and then, so that's the part of the reflecting on the situation. So affiliative style, I'm not even quite sure if I'm saying that right, but it's affiliation of leadership puts people first, concentrate and creating a harmonious work environment and building emotional bonds. The affiliative leadership style requires a lot of empathy and ability to build relationships through a range of communication styles. Affiliative leadership focus on building team bonds, relationships and emotional connections, which quickly resolve any team conflicts. The aim of affiliative leadership is to establish a positive feeling of harmony in team. The affiliative leader connects personally with each team member and ensures that connections are established between all the team members respectively. Given the focus of relationship, affiliative leadership can be very helpful when a new team is forming or when an existing team is in turmoil requiring emotional support. So this is where you might draw on this when you just see everybody's nitpicking and backbiting and everybody hates their job. It was only a few weeks ago, there was kind of a big blowout in one of the programs. And I swear to you, I went there probably 3 days later and it was just nasty there. You know what I mean? I just kind of had, I knew what happened. I could tell they were struggling. I was busy somewhere else for a minute. So I had to show up and I really just went to that program kind of for a morale booster and kind of just remind people what we're here for and what we do. And yes, that sucked. That situation sucked. And I get why everybody's stressed out. And I mean, I have kind of a tie with these people and I've been working with them a long time. So it was an easy sell and they know this, but just reminding them went a long way. I think that you can tell that this might be the style or approach you want to use when you see that. And when people are throwing each other under the bus for minor incidents, you know, like, and just kind of another toxicity. When you start, toxicity is like something you want to rip. As a leader of one of these programs, you cannot have toxic behavior in our programs. You cannot have manipulation. You cannot have backbiting. You cannot have lying. You cannot have like trying to, other people trying to push people down to make themselves look good. And I mean, it's so hard to see some of these things sometimes, but if we look honestly, you can identify them and I know you've seen them, you know what I mean? And I think the only way to get in front of that is, first off, you to get rid of toxicity, you yourself cannot be a toxic person and you can't draw on that stuff. So you got to like resist the urge. And I mean, some of that stuff is kind of almost instinctual. I mean, someone messes with us is our reflex to mess back. And if they're fight fire with fire sort of thing. So like you have to be mindful of that. You have to kind of resist that urge and just use healthy communication skills, bring people together for like collaborative meeting, try to work out differences, maybe like a group supervision or during team, go over these things, promote teamwork, promote working together, you know what I mean? And start conversations, and an open, honest dialogue can go a long way. Pace setting. That's another leadership style that we're going to be drawing on. And this one especially is like in a time of crisis, again, drawn on when the COVID pandemic hit. And I think in general, some pace setting was needed, but I remember one time inpatient had like 22 positive cases, and it was a crazy shit show. And everything in me probably just wanted to hide in my office and not deal with that. But I knew that was not going to work. And I knew that the team members that I cared deeply about and the clients who we serve that I definitely care deeply about, they were going to be the ones to suffer that. So I had to go out there, and I just had to set that direction, and I had to set that pace on what needs to be done, put a couple quick policies in place, or not policies, procedures in place that kind of helped us function throughout the day. And that's what that is. So pace setting leaders expect excellence and self-direction. Pace setting is a style of leadership when a leader leads from the front, constantly sets high standards with their team, and expects them to succeed with minimum management. It's when a manager, you set the cadence for your team and demand high intensity in their performance. As I'm reading that too, I'm thinking about this. That is always our goal. I mean, I've also had supervisors and seen supervisors and kind of back some of that toxic behavior. It's almost like they enjoy that dependency from their staff, and their staff running every little thing by them. I don't want to hear that. I want a strong team member, and I hope that you do too. And I want our employees to have confidence and to do their job. You know what I mean? So we're definitely going to promote that. And this is part of that. Pace setting to me is not only setting that pace, but it's also modeling that behavior and modeling like, this isn't, some things we do are complex, but mostly it's not rocket science, and it's almost mechanical. A lot of the things we do when we're trying to get through the days, day to day, you know what I mean? So it's kind of just showing that through behavior, but then also setting that expectation on them. You know what I mean? Coaching leader develops people for the future. There's some 10 effective coaching strategies that I found that I like. Know your employees. I think that's good. No one can't just sit up in our office and shoot out emails and post on Teams, because if we don't know their abilities, we don't know their comfort level, we don't know their strengths and their flaws, and we just think it's going to expect to get done, most likely it's not gonna. Foster transparency. I know when I was doing this, putting this together, a few of the leadership styles emphasize on transparency, and I love it because I believe not only is transparency needed for our team, transparency is our shield. Everybody included. The best example, I mean, transparency, me as a leader, first off, I want all my staff not to be able to say they don't know, or that no one told them, you know what I mean? So that's part of it, you know what I'm saying? But I also think that when we're transparent, it kind of fosters some trust, and hey, this person's not hiding anything from me. I don't feel anything like packed or loaded behind it. You know what I'm saying? That they've always been upfront before. They're telling me this thing right now. They have a history of being transparent with me. So that's part of it. Transparency also is our shield, because in our bedded programs, if you worked in them, I mean, once in a while, some crazy things happen. Someone rubs some PCs on the wall, people get in a fight, someone throws a chair across the thing and almost hits somebody, like, and just being able to communicate, making everybody aware, it kind of allows for nothing to be misinterpreted or twisted. You know what I mean? Like that transparent part of it, putting all out the open. It's like we have to put the lights high on and be comfortable with that. You know what I mean? Because when there's no shadows for people to hide in, or staff or clients, I'm talking, then nothing really can sneak up and bite you. You know what I mean? And that might sound a little paranoid, but that is what it is. You know what I mean? So definitely should foster transparency. Collaboration is key in the coaching style. Create clear objectives and goals. I fundamentally believe in this. I mean, and use that acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid. You have to like just make things clear and easy for people to understand and follow. Celebrate successes, build mutual trust, pave the way for success, share constructive feedback, ask for feedback from your team, and manage inter-team disputes. So again, with inter-team disputes, that speaks more to our culture and how we want happy and productive employees, and being able to monitor and deal with those issues that come up, because no matter what, they're going to come up. I think when I was starting out and my first few attempts at kind of dealing with those types of things, I was like, oh, that's over. It's going to be great. It always cycles back through. Things happen. New staff comes in, brings a new dynamic. So you can't just think that it's going to always be fine. It's almost, I don't want to say constant, but it will show there's always going to be things that creep back in, and a good leader is able to recognize those and deal with them appropriately. Charismatic leadership, it's in which leadership inspires enthusiasm in their teams and energetic, motivating others to move forward. By definition, charismatic leaders implies a leader who relies on persuasiveness, communication skills, and charm. A charismatic leader plays a valuable role in enterprises that they're experiencing a crisis or needs innovation. So what they're saying by there is like when shit gets rough, a charismatic person is your person that you want in your corner. That's what that means. Strategies to be a charismatic leader include transparent communication that provokes dialogue. So again, that goes into that transparency. Use of empathy, which opens the door to trust, instills confidence, which transforms to a believer into a doer. So if you're instilling a confidence in that you believe in that staff member, and they have this thing that they believe they can do, they're more likely to step up and do it, is what that's saying. Optimism transforms fear into an action plan, and passion is a driving force of day-to-day work. Because the transparency came up again, I meant to say this part of it too. Transparency is also a reward. Keeping everybody up on the same page is also a value. And the best example I have from that, when I was program director of inpatient, I started a group email at first just for case managers and myself. And that was to get, if you work or have worked inpatient, it's 28 days. We have to get a lot of things in place. We have to get DSS in place. We have to get referrals out the door. And we have to get numerous referrals out the door because sometimes there's long waiting lists. We never, it's hit or miss if we're going to get a bed. So we put like at least 3 of them out just to make sure that we're going to get one of those off. And at first it just started with us, and then it's just started going and started working. I included the counselors in that group email because I felt like they should be part of that like discussion, decision, and just know that that's what we're working on. And then while we get going, the case management system that we kind of developed started working better and better. Then I know that I have peers that are helping set up the transportation to get from our facility to the next place, or someone that helped out and called to do a follow-up after a referral we sent. So like I more and more, I keep seeing these people that just don't do as much as a case manager would do with the referral process, or as the decision making as a counselor might, but they did contribute to this thing. You know what I'm saying? This is kind of a big thing. We have a client who's came to us shooting 2 bundles of heroin a day, living under a bridge, and now they're leaving us and they have 28 days sober and they're going to a safe place to live. That's kind of a cool thing. This person contributed. So I ended up just including the whole program, the whole clinical staff in that, because it kind of served, I guess you could say, how I envisioned it anyways. Like a car salesman dealership where when a salesman sells the car, they kind of ding the bell like, oh, I got another one, And it did serve that purpose. And I think that until I included everybody, like the case management system was working, but after that, it became like this thing that kind of defined the program and like a jewel on the crown of it, or whatever, metaphor or analogy you want to use. And everybody kind of played a part in it some way or another. Maybe not all the time, like the case manager and counselors, it's their primary thing, but depending on who was on that day in a tech or peer position or whatever, and helped out, like they didn't help out with every referral, but they helped out with that one, and collectively got to see how the program functioned and how us all working together kind of resulted in something pretty significant. You know what I mean? So again, that's just another good reason to be transparent. Excuse me. So the supervisor role, those are the leadership styles that I believe in a better program are crucial. We got the charismatic, we have the coaching leadership, we have the pace setting leadership style, the authoritative leadership style, and the authoritative leadership style. So like drawing on all of those, even if like maybe I gravitate more towards the charismatic, where you might gravitate towards more the authoritative, that is okay. But we also want to be mindful of the other ones and incorporate them whenever we can. I hope that makes sense. So the supervisor's role in the embedded program. Supervisor's primary goal is to monitor the program as a whole and ensure services are being delivered. compliance is upheld and the program is functioning as it should. I want to say that keyword function. When I think of a team, a clinical team, when I think of any team, I think of it in what we've learned, like in family dynamics. And again, I spoke about toxicity earlier. You gotta have a toxic family. Typically, that family is dysfunctional. That same thinking applies to us. So functioning, if your program is meeting the goals and things are getting done as that should, that's showing that you have a healthy functioning program. It's never going to be like everybody's like just rainbows and butterflies coming out their hands every day, but I'm talking as a whole, it's a functioning program. Another supervisor role is running daily or weekly reports based on need to ensure notes are being done and all assessments, treat plans, or any other relevant compliance is being upheld. In the folder you're going to have is your onboarding process. I'm going to go over all this stuff with you. I do have like a supervisor tools that kind of name some key reports that we can run on a regular basis that kind of serve as a temperature gauge, see that things are getting done, see that people are getting meet. You should definitely run these regularly. You know what I mean? Because they help you monitor what's really going on. They help you to see where someone might be struggling or missing and needs to pick up some slack, that you can address it and keep your program on track. So it's crucial. You have to be comfortable with that. You have to be comfortable and with not only sending the email, hey, I seen you only met with such and such 10 days ago. You're supposed to meet them every week. Could you please get with them ASAP? And then on top of that, maybe check them again the next day to make sure that was done. You know what I mean? Obviously, if it's a staff that you has worked with you for a while and you know that they're solid like that, and you could just you might not have to do that. But let's say it's a brand new staff that we're training, you might have to do that follow up. You know what I mean? Or maybe it's a staff that has worked with you and going through some things. We're going to be understanding, but we still need to make sure that stuff gets done. Or sir, maybe it's a staff that's new and they don't quite get it, or maybe they've been there 6 months and they should be quite getting it by now. So it's starting to be a problem. There's different variations, but no matter what, you should still be running these reports and checking that things. Supervisor must also try to stay removed as much as possible from the day to day. It is a mistake for a director to be directly or team lead. Team lead's a little bit different because they are part of that leadership team, but the team leads that's kind of their role, is to function, check on things and make sure they're getting done. You know what I'm saying? And work with the director on that part of it too, where the director's one step removed from that, kind of looking at all the I's and T's and looking at the whole picture. You know what I mean? Like seeing how all the wheels are moving, because that's the best way I can put it. And the team lead is part of that too. You know what I'm saying? But you need to be avoid the day-to-day as much as possible, intervening or rescuing unless needed or no one else available, because the supervisor must stay as objective as possible to ensure quality and professional care being delivered. So what I mean by that is this: if you are a supervisor that wants a personal connection with every single client, and maybe like you've got some that pull at your heartstrings, in a clinical world, that is okay. As a counselor, that is okay. As a supervisor, though, it's your job to make sure that your counselors and your clinical staff are not experiencing unconscious bias, maybe not be showing some favoritism or specialty treatment. And as if you are directly involved, it's a lot harder to see that. So you do want to do your best to stay a step back. And you also want to do your best to stay a step back because you want to encourage your staff to handle that stuff for you. You know what I'm saying? Not for you. That's the wrong word. I'm sorry. But that stuff as they should. So it's really for them and it's for the client because that is their job. You don't want to enable poor behavior. You don't want to enable, like, if someone's struggling doing something, you want to know that because we can train them and we can fix that. You know what I mean? Whereas if you just kind of do for all the time, that's not going to serve your purpose on contributing to that functioning program that can be upheld and should be upheld. And that means like getting done what needs to be done. Supervisors must keep an eye on all communications to keep an eye out for reoccurring issues not being addressed by staff and to make sure things like referrals are being sent. If identified deficits, supervisors must send reminders to staff to complete. So I just got into that a little bit, a couple slides, or at least a slide ago. That goes across the board. I know we use team messages a lot, and I know even me, as a director, you should be in those messages all day, every day. That doesn't mean you have to comment on everything. That doesn't mean you have to do everything. But if you're seeing the same client, the same issue every day getting mentioned in this team's message and no one's doing nothing about it, and it's been 3 days, it's time to get involved. You know what I'm saying? Same, yeah, I might not monitor day to day, but like I randomly, at least once a week, go through the kind of messages and I skim for keywords like yell, argued, did, you know, I mean, just the things that suggest an issue might be going on, and I look for that, and I kind of look for a pattern if it's the same person. And I might ask them to want to use the directors, the team leads, what's going on here? Has this been addressed? And so it is good to be keeping an eye on communications. Every program is a little bit different. I think it's not as rush. I do think it's a good idea to keep referrals on. Referrals are a tricky thing, and training people to do it, they have different opinions on it. Some places like fax, I hate that in this day and age. Email's so much easier to track, but also with the faxes, the thing happens where the referrals get sent, we forget to like check on it for a week or two, and when we do, the place so they never got. You know what I mean? So it is good to kind of keep an eye on, and that's fine. If like say you have an employee and they prefer the fax, that's fine until it stops working, and then it's not fine. You know what I mean? Like if it's consistently, I don't know what happened, I sent the fax, but the result is just consistently, we're not getting to bed. It's time to kind of like push, hey, let's try this new way. Let's send emails encrypted, and it's easier for us to see the people got them. And in this day and age, most people do prefer that anyways, but and we're just using this kind of as an example. You know what I mean? In times of crisis or in times when the primary counselor may be unaware client is in need of intervention. So like if they're off and you're working and that client really needs a behavioral support plan or something else, like obviously you're going to step up and do that because you want to. You want to keep them lines kind of clear. You might have another counselor that's going to do it for you, and that's fine too. But like, it's just also good to. I mean, I think it's situational. I think if we have a counselor that might be struggling and avoiding that stuff, yes, I'm going to do it because it still needs to be done. But that should be me. I shouldn't have another counselor do it. You know what I'm saying? Because then you're getting into that, we're covering for them, and that counselor might start getting some resentments if I'm having them kind of passing that buck to them all the time. Contrast that to where they just might be off. Yeah, the other counselor can do it because that counselor is going to be off on a day and they're going to need us to do it. So that's okay. Does that make sense? You want to keep things fair and consistent. Supervisors must always be monitoring the minimum services are being made, discharge plans occurring, staff is dealing with day-to-day in clinical professional manner, and compliance is being upheld. Minimum service, meet with their primary once a week. And the residentials, we do 3 clinical services a weekday, usually 1 or 2 on a group on a weekend, at least 1, sometimes 2. Inpatient, I don't even know what the requirement is, but you guys do groups all day, every day, just because it's good to keep clients very busy. So you're always way over what the requirement is. So I don't really worry too much about the groups, more just the notes being done. As a supervisor, you have the influence and ability to create your own culture. And the culture is very important because that speaks to that toxicity part that I'm talking about. You don't want a toxic culture. You don't want clicky culture. You don't want people ganging up on each other or feeling psychologically unsafe. I mean, we do work in a field. It's highly unlikely someone would feel physically unsafe, at least from each other, from other staff. But I mean, people can be nasty. You want to keep that toxicity out. And that's definitely part of your culture, and you want to promote healing, you want to promote growth for the clients, and for us to promote that, we ourselves have to be healthy. So that too is part of that culture you want to promote. And as a supervisor and as that point person, you do have that ability. Strategies to do this are get the entire team on board with the company's mission. CASA's mission in the better programs to provide a safe, stable environment clients can flourish in, along with laying a foundation that will support them in the recovery journey using evidence-based practice and strategy with clinical decisions based in criteria and objective measure. That one is so important, and you're going to struggle seeing your staff, and they're going to be like, oh, this client just really reports that they don't want to go to an 820 and they want to go back to the DSS emergency housing, and they prefer that. And the counselor might even be trying to make a case with them. And, you know, I think of person-centered, we're not doing that. We're not doing that because when I think of person-centered, it's a balance between needs, abilities, and preferences. The need is a safe and stable environment. And although that might be the client's preference, that's report, and they can go there, but that's not going to be our recommendation. You know, I mean, like that's their choice. We can't make it. We're not going to force it on them. We're not going to drag them to our residential program. But clinically and ethically, we have our own standards to uphold, and we're going to make our decisions based on what we're seeing, what the symptoms are, what's going on in the person's life. You know what I'm saying? Like it, not necessarily just that. So with that said, it's going to be something that you have to like maintain. I mean, that's the thing. Like we are the higher level of clinical care. You know, inpatient's the highest in New York State. I mean, a psych ward beats us, but that's only like a 3-day, 5-day thing anyways. You know what I mean? Intensive residential, that's the next highest. And because we're the highest, I just really believe we have to be the most by the book. We have to go solely on what we see and what we know. and what's going on with the person. And we don't even have a lot of time to do it in most cases. You know what I mean? So we just have to keep that clear, and you will see staff struggle with this. So it's kind of your job to guide, educate, point out discrepancies, point out potential biases, and kind of like get done what we need to be done. If you want to have a functioning program, if you want clients to get the services that match their need, you're going to have to do it. Number two, set transparent individual and collective goal. Again, with that transparency. When we say transparent, we mean creating awareness, organizational process, and tasks at hands. Who's doing them, when they should be finished, when teammates knows that everyone was working, everyone wins. So I would use the example, what I did was that case managing that I told you guys about a few minutes ago. That's exactly what that is. We're that email serving a purpose that we know it went out, we know it's response, we know what the result, we know who did what. You know what I'm saying? There's a few benefits of the transparency at work. You avoid duplicate work. I mean, you got people running around chasing their tails and 3 people submitting the same referral. That's not, I mean, we're probably going to get that bad, but that's not really helping us because we're missing other things that we could be doing. Tasks get done because you became accountable to the entire team. You avoid petty jealousy because you realize everyone's working on their own task. That was another benefit too. I remember that I had a young new person starting, and they worked for me for a minute, and they still do. They're an A-teamer, but when they started, I like really trained them on their probably as the case management was getting going up running, and they would sit at that computer and they would just bang out referrals like a machine gun, and they would be busy doing that. And even if they were like at the front desk doing that, and maybe something was going on, they're kind of in their own world because they're like dragging down psych evals or filling applications. Like they might hear it, but like it's always low cap. You don't think none of it. And like staff would get so mad sometimes. They would think that person's doing nothing. So again, with that transparency thing, we started that group email, including everybody, and they seen that person was just putting out referrals like a machine gun. That kind of cut back down on that backbite and junk talking and thinking that person's not doing anything or not doing something that's equally as valuable. You know what I mean? Number 3, offer tools to help get the work done. Give a person a handsaw. No matter how diligently they work, they'll never be outperformed the competitor with a power saw. That same goes for your employees. For them to produce as possible, you have to offer the right tools. So like job aids, training matrix, trainings on common areas, clear and consistent, easy file process procedures make things easier to understand and apply in practice. You know, I mean, we got to like design these things so that everybody can do them no matter what their skill level. So unless you're a program director that you want to constantly face challenges associated with boundaries and staff splitting by clients and other staff trying to split you, it's best practice to set lines and procedures that hold staff accountable, guides towards it. Because I mean, you've got a good process. There's no way around it. You're going to get the end result that you need. You know what I mean? And allow staff to deal with common issues. So not constantly asking you or creating problem programs because each staff are allowed to do or they're allowed to do or are allowed to do different things. You know what I mean? It kind of gets a little chaotic when something as simple as snack time turns into almost World War III because such and such gave extra cupcakes when they did it. You get what I'm saying? And I know it seems stupid, but that is our world. And if you worked in it, you know I'm not lying. Number 4, encourage collaboration among teammates. Collaboration entails pulling together several intellectual resources to reach a common goal. There are many benefits when it comes to collaboration. You get multiple perspectives about one topic. It brightens horizons. You get several perspectives. It can mean that one person might see a solution that another didn't. You create a pool of the best knowledge available. The team becomes more involved with each other and therefore more invested in the team results, when in turn boosts levels of loyalty within the team itself. I know some of you have seen it in practice. I am huge on team. I'm huge unless it's like a true safety issue that we need to decide something right then. Everything should be teamed. And even if it's kind of an issue that needs to, like, maybe we just had team yesterday and this thing happens and it's not an looming safety issue that the world's going to blow up, but we need to handle it sooner than next Tuesday. Even like a collaborative teams message, we're going to promote that. And it is just good because you as a supervisor, I'm going to use administrative discharge as an example. Having been that person, I can tell you, we make decisions that impact people's lives. And that's just a hard reality of that situation. You know what I'm saying? And we might have someone on treatment court and they are on their last chance. And we might know this and they do something just outlandish, like sexually assault by groping a female unwanted, male client groping a female on client. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And we're going to make that call. You know what I'm saying? So like involving everybody and getting everybody's perspectives A, goes in that transparency, so everybody's up on the same beat and knows why that decision was made. But also, like, when it's collaborative like that, I think it just helps us. It helps us understand that we're making the right choice. It helps us make it understand that we're seeing all the same things. You know what I'm saying? So like that is so huge in what we do. And I know I gave the extreme example that can apply to so many areas. Number five, celebrate achievements. Possibly the most overlooked feature of creating a productive office culture is employee recognition. Meanwhile, work doesn't want employees feel happy and their expectation reward for a job well done are met. To meet these expectations, besides evident needs of employees such as financial stability, healthcare, safe work environment, you have to make them feel their work is noticed, appreciated, that it furthers the company's mission. So we're going to say good job, and we're going to send out emails. We're going to post big shout outs to people and teams and say, oh, look at how such and such handling that business. You know what I mean? Because not only also that's a learning opportunity, but it also affirms person what they did. Teamwork makes the dream work. If you knew Trish Carey, that was her slogan. So what it should look like in an action, teamwork, the only way it works is how it all works together. While multidisciplinary approach is standard and important in all programs, in the embedded program, it's critical. The more private practice view of my client, it will be less effective in better programs, and it may negatively impact outcomes and client success. And what I mean by that, if you have a worked outpatient, it's just more common. Some outpatients are more collaborative like that, but clinicians can be very territorial about their clients, very protective at times, and it can be a good thing. We don't got time for all that. You know what I mean? We not only do we have time for all that because maybe this person just wants to make all the decisions, but they have a week off and something happens. We don't have, back to what I said about unconscious bias, we don't have a lot of time to sort through that stuff because outpatient, they have time. When I worked outpatient, I worked with clients for a year or two. You know what I mean? Nothing had to be that immediate. We got 28 days in the inpatient. We got 90 days in intensive interventional. They go to halfway house 6 to 8 months. By the time we get supported living, that's just basically like we're landlords that can drug screen. You know what I mean? So we're not even doing as much, but we're still maybe we're working on it. But we got time there. You know what I mean? Especially in the higher levels, man. We just don't have the time, and we need a multidisciplinary approach. We need all perspectives and angles, and we need to be solution focused. And for that, we got to work together. Clients meet criteria for inpatient intensive residential programs due to inability to maintain sobriety outside of a structured setting. So to treat in these settings, it's important to set up a structure that promotes recovery and maintains integrity of programs as a clinical setting. I think that part's real important too. Like your place you're running, the place you're supervising the team, your clinic, you need to feel like a clinic. You can't just feel like chaotic. You know, I do some program development in past, and I remember one program involved. I've also had some experience with county jails. It was just the client, it was like a zoo when I got in there, and clients were just loud and banging things and playing music and doing whatever the hell. And that's not treatment. That your program is suffering from that. And you need to like be a clinic, feel like a clinic, and set that pace like that so that the clients can see those clear boundaries. That way they don't even try that stuff, to be honest with you. If you treat your place like the more you treat your program like a clinic, you'd be surprised the more people respond to it that way. You know what I mean? So remember, that's your setting. That is your clinical setting. You know what I mean? You go to the doctor's office, you go to outpatient, you ain't doing all that. Why you think that's allowed in one of our programs? You know what I'm saying? It's the same thinking, man. That's a professional setting, and it's not just a flop house. They're there for a reason. So each position, each staff plays a role in this, and in its delivery of service. And it's important to view the actual environment as part of the therapeutic experience that must be maintained. It's not a suggestion, like you must maintain that therapeutic integrity, and the therapeutic experience is what we're doing. We're all part of the process. Communication is crucial to be effective. While we can never fully true control the environment, making it look like we do prevents so much. Ignoring problems, waiting for someone else to deal with, only makes things escalate and gets worse. It's just we're not even paying attention. Dealing with the issues consistently and immediately suggests we are watching closely, and maintaining the therapeutic environment is very important to us, that we take that serious. You know what I mean? We get posted on Teams, such and such happened at night. I mean, again, if you have experience, we might only have 2 staff on. They might be texts at 9 o'clock at night. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like they're going to deal with that and they're going to leave it for us in the morning. That's okay. And they're going to communicate. We're going to pick up on that first thing in the morning. When the clinical team gets in there, and we're going to let them know, we communicate and everybody talks. We all know what's going on all the time. You know what I mean? We have a united front, and we're going to deal with that appropriately. And just by doing that, it sets a pace, man. It does. If done correctly, it also just naturally has a positive effects, and seems that the more we run the programs like an actual clinic, the more clients respond in a positive way. As a clinic, and not just some hangout or homeless shelter. I touched on that a little bit in the last slide. The key to having a good clinic is to run a good clinic. At the end of the day, good or bad, the program does not function unless we all work together and make sure it does. While all staff contributes to that function collectively and must always work together, there are specific things that can be done based on position. Below are the primary functions of each clinical staff, and altogether as a multidisciplinary team creates the magic. To do so takes each staff playing their position, playing it well, and meeting their objectives. So before I get into that, I do want to say when I'm talking here, this is your team and how you play them. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but I am going to go over kind of a general sense of what their role and how they should be working that position and what you should be monitoring for. So I'm going to start with the frontline clinical staff like techs and peers. They're more in the day-to-day. They're out in the milieu a lot. There's a lot more interaction. I always want to say too, I'm probably going to say it in there because I wrote this a while ago. I don't remember, but please be mindful of them. Please be respectful of them. They have the lowest man on the totem pole job, but in reality, they kind of deal with the hardest stuff because when things pop off and when things get chaotic, they're usually the first ones to get that initial blow. You know what I mean? So take care of your frontline staff. Don't just treat them like peons. Don't just treat them like errand boys and girls. Like make sure that they know they're valued and that you know their job is hard. You understand? And I think that alone is going to go a long way in how they follow you and respond to you. You know what I'm saying? So their job is to maintain the structure, boundaries, and integrity of the program. No favors or specialty treatment. You can't have a peer or tech just granting all the wishes and going to the property room, get whatever they want, going in and fixing them special steak sandwiches every time they want one of them. Like that can't go down. Everybody gets treated the same in our programs. Staff needs to be trained to know it's okay to say no. If they come across a request that does not fit the program and the structure, must push it back to the counselors. We're talking about the request. So if they get something don't quite fit our norms and rules, they can't just give a yes answer. That's going to make things crazy. But they can push it to the clinical team and the counselors, and they can be part of the decision if it's something that we ain't seen or dealt with before. But they can't just get a yes. You know what I'm saying? Doing so not only therapeutically assists in teaching skills needed to delay immediate gratification, because that's another thing too. Clients might feel this sense of urgency, but it's not a crisis. It's not that important. They can wait till tomorrow until we give them an answer or decide what we want to do in kind of these areas that are out, maybe outside our norms. It also serves to limit boundaries being pushed, staff splitting, attempts to manipulate clients by through demonstrate we only respond to requests that are made through a program as they're designed to be made. So what I'm saying there is there's this misconception, interpretation that kind of if you just give in people, I'm not even gonna say clients, kids. I see it with in parenting styles. I see it in clinical care. I see it in interpersonal relationships. You know what I mean? Yes, especially our loved ones. I mean, I'm gonna just stay with our loved ones. I'm gonna keep it off condition. Of course, we want our kids and our loved ones to be happy and to have what they want in life, but also we can't spoil them, and you can't give the message that you just ring a bell and get everything away because it's not realistic. You know what I'm saying? And it's critical in our programs because the people we're treating kind of have this expectation of it almost. And if they're going to function in society, we need to nip that in the bud. You know what I mean? Because the reality is nothing in this life is just handed to you, and that it takes patience and it takes kind of some work. And we're not going to make them go out and like build a shed for us because they want an extra cookie. You know what I'm saying? But you know, there's a within reason and when appropriate is when we might bend. You know, but typically we're across the board. Just because you throw your ass a little bit or kind of snap your fingers doesn't mean we're jumping to attention. You know what I mean? This isn't Burger King, your way right away. I mean, each one of us, if you work for CASA takes care of their programs. They have everything they need. They have a roof over their head. They have food in their belly. Sometimes they show up, they might have a lot of clothes. We have internal donations. And if we can't accommodate that, it might take us a day or two, but we're going to get them some stuff. You know what I'm saying? So they got clothes on their back and kind of comfort of the thing. Anything outside that is a want, not a need. You know what I mean? And if we can make it happen, we will, because we want our clients to be comfortable there. You know what I'm saying? We want our clients to be well served, but at the end of the day, again, it's not Burger King your way right away, and that kind of thinking that's not going to suit them in reality, you know, in the real world. So it's kind of part of the program. Not only is it detrimental and kind of makes things messy, but it's just also really should be part of the treatment. You know what I mean? Maintain a daily schedule, rounding up clients for groups. And sure, I'm talking about this is the parent tech road. 5 minutes for a group. Peer and tech should go round them up, especially if you got someone that's not been going lately. We're going to send someone down there. We're going to get them out of that room. Ensure staff So maintain daily schedule, round up the clients or groups, insurance areas staff to monitor and observe clients in their environment. So staff present alone can serve to present many common issues. So if you're just like isolating behind office doors and hiding from the milieu area, it's going to create problems. Just staff presence alone, and this is primarily the peer and techs are going to be that. But I mean, as a supervisor, you should be promoting counselors to be out there too. You can't just have your counselors hide in their office all day. You know what I mean? Because it's so easy just to let them think that everything's groovy because they're not even paying attention. They need to get out there to see what's really going on. And if they're really treating clients and their behaviors, how can you do that from behind a closed door? You need to see them in the environment. You need to see how they interact with others. You need to see how others respond to them. You know what I mean? It says a long way about, it says a lot of things about people. Crisis management skills. Everybody, when they start, they do get some crisis and de-escalation training, but that doesn't mean necessarily everybody has a talent for it. So we need, as supervisors, we need to be mindful of that. And we need to see if someone's interaction, someone triggers easy, if someone might need some more training, if someone might need some individualized attention. I had a peer and inpatient, didn't work out, but they definitely had some interpersonal deficits there, and kind of the slightest thing had a hair trigger with that confrontation. You know what I mean? And again, we don't want to be walked over, but we're also not going to be like, we don't want our staff to be getting in power struggles and fights with clients neither. So you got to be mindful of that. And if you see someone struggling, they need to be trained, or if it continues, even assessed if that's the right environment for them. Frontline staff may not possess skills needed for full de-escalation, but should be trained at very least have comprehensive deal with, like, remove clients from the milieu into office and notifying clinical staff they need to intervene. So what I mean by that is, I think it's pretty straightforward, but peers and techs might deal with that. Like I said, they're out there, they might see that initial blow quickly. So even just training them to kind of isolate the incident and get a clinician involved, that can go a long way. And expecting them to fully handle or deal with, they didn't go to college to get their bachelor's and master's and 4 or 6 years worth of training and education now to deal with these things. So to expect that's kind of, counterproductive. You know what I mean? Frontline clinical staff and techs and peers again. Frontline staff are the eyes and ears throughout the day and play one of the most important parts, watching and reporting potential problems. This one can take a minute, and this one can take a lot of hands-on, because you also want them to do that consistently, and you want to do that non-biasedly. And that's kind of, especially with new staff, I've seen them struggle. It starts out, and it can be turned around. I've seen it turn around, but it might start out, they don't necessarily call that charming person out all the time because they like that person. But this person kind of gets under their skin, they're just always on teams complaining about. You got to watch for that bias right there, and you have to deal with it and train them appropriately, and not be afraid to do so. Frontline staff must be trained to report clinically and accurately, and trained to identify what behaviors are relevant. So again, most of you probably have worked for me. We do the behavior support plans. Client rolls their eyes walking away. There is nothing wrong with that. However, if we got someone blazing teams, oh my goodness, they roll their eyes at me, they need a contract, this and that, that staff needs to be got with and kind of, I don't want to say like retrained, that definitely needs to be discussed at the very least, and pointing out how it's low and appropriate, and we can't have personal and emotional responses to people. Clients are allowed to disagree, have bad days or bad moments. Staff must be trained to recognize the difference when just typical or when they're really problematic. The problematic stuff they need to report. Stuff like rolling their eyes, I mean, they can report if they're something like client seems to have a poor attitude today, they can't report in a way. It's the problem when they're reporting in a way when they're getting pissed off about it. You know what I mean? So that's just something to look out for. Frontline staff is also communicating everything. So we need to make sure that they're doing this. Frontline staff might utilize the tools provided, such as shift reports, team messaging, positive recognition and fraction systems to record and report behaviors. Counselors at CASA must also be receptive, pay attention to these communications, be ready to support the frontline ASAP. So if you, as a supervisor, are seeing that you got your peers out there always doing and talking about what's going on, this client threatened this person, and your clinicians ain't doing nothing about it, you need to get with those clinicians, because those clinicians need to get their asses out the office and they need to deal with that stuff, because that is their job. It is not the peer and tech's job to handle them hard things. You understand? Supervisors, counselors, and CAs must be trained and made aware that in many ways, frontline client staff is there in the mixed environment all day, every day, and is one of the most difficult jobs, really. They get paid the least, the lowest on totem pole, and they got the hardest job. It's kind of just the way of life. Not always fair. We should at least recognize it and be respectful of them and support them where they need it. It is not the job of frontline staff to run the program. It's not their job to like dictate the rules and make sure like clients are getting interventions and their treatment plans and like food's getting done. That's kind of our job, you know what I mean? And they play the part eyes and ears only, and they respond to crisis in the media and report it so that clinics can get involved. Supervised counselors and SAs must be trained and made aware to recognize when the programs may be experienced distress and make themselves available, spend time in the community, and allow frontline staff breaks and opportunities to come down after dealing with stressful situations. What I mean by that, if you see on through Teams messages or emails that like it is just popping off and you don't see anybody going out there, yeah, we're gonna need to do a group supervision. I'm gonna need made aware about that because when, I mean, things get missed. I might be in as a counselor, I might be in a session and I'm not even paying attention to the message, but we got 6 other people there and no one went out. We need to be talking about that. And it's because, again, it's not all on the text and peers. And if you're seeing that going on in your program, you need to nip that in the bud and get in front of that immediately. So I'm going to get a counselor on voc ed. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. Again, I wrote this a while ago. The voc ed is kind of a newer position. I think it is about equivalent with the counselor assistant position. So therefore, I kind of grouped them together. Obviously, they have to do their referrals. They have to do their vocational services. Counselor assistants got to do the housing ones and DSS and all that stuff. So they have that as their primary role and scope of practice. And then they also have the way how they support us operationally. So they are somewhere between the clinical staff and the peers and techs. Not quite a clinician, but also not quite frontline staff because they got to go in the office because that's the job they have. And they have to do voc ed counselors got to meet with clients and do vocational planning, vocational goals. Counselors have to fill out referrals and whatnot. They can't just be in the milieu all day or they're not going to get that job done. So we have to make room for that as supervisors, but also make sure they know they are part of this team. And just because their job might keep them off the floor more doesn't mean they don't go off the floor at all. And they definitely need to be out there if something's going on. They should always be on alert, and unless directly working with another client in the office of more crisis, if there's a crisis in the milieu, is communicated through Teams, they should immediately go out to the community to assist the frontline staff. While this also applies to counselors, the CAs and voc eds are not held to the same requirements as a PC with individual amount or group, so that they're going to be able to do that a little bit more. And what I mean by that is like typically counselor assistant and voc ed, they might do 2 or 3 groups and they have to meet with clients kind of regularly, but like a clinician has to, I know inpatient, they do about 8 groups a week and they have to meet with every client at least once a week. And then intensive residential, they're doing 4 or 5 groups a week. And again, they have to meet, they have a bigger caseload, with 10 clients instead of 8, and they still have to meet with the other clients every week. So they just might not be as receptive, but again, you need to monitor as a supervisor. The counselors are involved in their work too, but because the counselors and the voc ed they're more part of the clinical team. And because they don't have the in-office requirement as much, they need to be paying attention and kind of, let's look at it like peers and techs are the first responders, counselors and voc eds, they should be the second, you know what I mean? But holistically, all of us, if we're free, we should be paying attention. So there is a mechanical part, district plans and referral process that should not need to be told to the counselors and voc ed counselors, but should start admissions. This goes in the district. So this is sorry, I got a little off. This relates to not as far as client management. This goes into their actual scope of practice and job. So basically what it's saying here is they should know their job. The vocational counselor knows that they need to link this person with Access VR or hook up with some vocational counselor in the community or community resources. They just know that's what they should be done. They should not have to be told by us. Obviously, this does not apply if someone's a new staff and we're training them. I'm talking about in their day-to-day. They shouldn't just be sitting around waiting for us to direct it. We need to encourage that self-direction, and we need to make sure that they're getting that stuff done, and we need to monitor all our communications and emails and know what's getting done, but also like promote that independence. And they need to know that's part of their job. Now I'm going to get into counselors and their scope of practice. Compared to other staff, peers, techs, and CAs to do 0 to 3 groups weekly, or an average counselor does 6 to 8 weekly based on program needs, and these groups must have a more clinical focus. So when it goes down to the day-to-day operations, at the end of the day, we work in an environment where it should be all team spirit and everybody should be willing to help out. However, counselors do get a little bit more lax with that because they also have to counsel. I know when I'm working with, I've had problems with staff in the past, and you might have heard me even say it. I will go in on the hours that they've utilized in 10-11. And CASA and outpatient holds their outpatient counselors to a standard of 70%. They call it productivity rate. The productivity rate is everything a counselor puts on their 10-11 schedule, checks in and puts a document for. So if they do a 30-minute session, that goes to their productivity rate. If they could do an hour group, that goes to their productivity rate, et cetera, et cetera. CASA, they moved the dashboards and they're looking at a lot of different outcomes now that are probably more important and also wouldn't be done if someone wasn't being productive. So they don't necessarily do the rate anymore, but it's the easiest to describe and conceptualize for this purpose right now. So like when I was director of inpatient, I noticed that 70% productivity at inpatient was impossible. And that's because outpatient has like 30, 40 on caseload, where inpatient can have 8. And B, the counselor needs to be in the milieu interacting with clients. That's part of that job. And it's just not on 10-11. So like a 40% time in 10-11 ratio kind of works out nicely, 35 to 40%. So with that said, that's still a lot of work, you know what I mean? And they got the actual work to do. And on top of that, they have to document it. On top of that, they got treatment plans and other things they're doing, you know what I mean? So they are a little bit busier, but again, they still need to be part of that team collectively. And we need to promote that as part of our culture because it kind of feeds the team spirit and helps resentments. And again, I think even like training our counselors to go out and give the peers and techs a break, you know what I mean? That goes a long way. You know what I mean? That person feel, hey, you want to step out for a minute? I can sit here for half an hour, you know, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? That peer and tech, they know it's their job to sit in that milieu at the front desk or wherever it may be, like all day, and they know that's their job. But just being validated by like that, it goes a long way. You know what I mean? And again, I'll go back as a counselor. They're there for behavioral stuff often, and it's just good to be interact with them in the environment. You know what I mean? So that's part of the gig, but also kind of as a team spirit thing and supervisor, we need to be promoting that. Counselors require to meet each client on their caseload minimum one time a week. As a result of more delivery and document, so collectively I'm talking here. So if all these things are getting done and we're in compliance with OASIS and insurance and the treatment plans, PS form, discharge plan, and all that stuff, they need to complete the hover. Counselors are also the final line of crisis management. So when it triggers, maybe like the peers and techs get that separated, counselor assistant might have got like some information, and now we find like counselor was tied up for a second and now they're kind of got to work through the problem. You know what I mean? Because again, it is not the peers tech's role to run the clinical program. It's the clinicians. You get what I'm saying there? So anytime you kind of see that stuff getting pawned off, because this thing happens early on in this training, I mentioned how we have all employees with different education backgrounds from high school to master and training experience levels. However, this kind of counter transference thing comes. I've seen it, and some of y'all might seen it, where like a counselor really thinks that they have the same responsibilities and expectations as a tech. You know what I'm saying? We need to nip that quick. You know what I'm saying? Because they do not. That's why they get paid more. That's why they have credentials. That's why they kind of are, as much as I promote no hierarchy, it does exist, and they're more on top of the food chain. And to kind of debase themselves, if we allow that, that's going to cause problems. You know what I mean? And they will try, not all, but some will. You know what I mean? So then the final line, crisis management must stay alert to internal communications, those text messages and teams or emails, and unless an officer or another client time of crisis must be available to assist frontline staff or the CAs and folk head counselors if there's a crisis. So no hiding in your office. And you as the supervisor might have to be mindful of that and kind of push that. And I've been doing this for a minute. Well, outside of crisis, just to make sure they're out. If we've had real problems in the past, we will start putting on the 10-11 schedule, like blocks of time where they need to be out in the community. So that is a strategy you can use if you ever see someone kind of counselor trying to dig in or hide in their office. Getting towards the end there. Counselors are solely responsible for any interventions, treatment contracts, and follow through to ensure any assignments or interventions are actually completed. You as the supervisor must monitor that and make sure it's being completed as well. Because if you're just going to think that like when the time comes and we have to address something, you say, I told such and such that did it. Obviously, we all get busy and that might be okay once in a while, but if we're consistently getting as a supervisor, that's going to be a problem because at the end of the day, it's your job to get them to do their job. That is what the supervisor's job is. All counselors must ensure to stay in alignment with any recommendations made by a counselor who did initial assessment cannot deviate unless client individual situation dictates or suggests another recommendation needs to be made. This was like more specific to inpatient, but I do think it's applying. It's basically like once that clinical team makes a decision, that's the decision. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not going to allow for client. If we have a client, I'm gonna use the same example of the guy we have shooting 2 miles a day that came to us homeless and wants to go back to the Greenway. And maybe we did some work and got him there where he's agreed to an 820 and maybe not totally willingly. And treatment court got involved and kind of like said, you got to do it. You know what I mean? We're not going to allow our that situation where that client can go to another counselor and kind of give them a sob story and try to turn that team around and get another decision. If you start seeing that happen, we're definitely interested in that. You as a supervisor are definitely interested in that. You can get me involved. We're definitely interested in that because the team decision is the team decision always. That's just what it is, has to be. Levels of care needed or what program referral will be should be always include client's preference, but just based on, sorry, I lost my thought here. Levels of care needed or what programs referral will be made should always include client preferences, but just based on bed availability and what is truly feasible. Client's preference cannot be the driving force. So what that means is, say we got a client and the 820 wants to go to Treppenbrook, and they're like, I want to go to Treppenbrook. And we look on the bed availability and Treppenbrook ain't got no beds. And this client discharges in a month. We're not going to tell the client, no, we're going to refer the client to Treppenbrook, but we're also going to make sure we put a couple other referrals in the client understands, because we don't want to run out of time and that client has to go homeless. We don't want to miss another opportunity because Treppenbrook said that the client's been there before and had behavioral issues, but we don't find that out till 3 days before he's supposed to discharge. You know what I'm saying? So we always have to be genuine and kind of reality based with the clients. And of course, we're going to meet them where they're at with preferences, but we also need to be selling the reality situations. We're dealing one in Dansville right now. This guy is just going nuts and he wants to go to this specific place and he's winding us down and riding us down, you know what I mean? And we have a few more referrals. And at the end of the day, he's gonna have to go where the bed comes up because he's running out of time. And the one place he wants to go, he's like 26 on the wait list, you know what I mean? So we're kind of working with him now on that. As this can be a potential source, and that's why as a supervisor, I think you guys need to monitor for it and be prepared to deal with it. To be successful, we must be consistent and united in our message, and we must send by offering, we must not offer any room for negotiation when not appropriate and for true reasons. This opens the door to too much indecisiveness and may lead to unsuccessful referrals if we unintentionally give impression we cannot secure referral programs we most likely will not be able to obtain. So that's just kind of knowing what we're dealing with, and you as a supervisor paying attention to what's hot and what's not, and kind of like you get a feel for it. That's all I can explain. And if it's been 3 weeks and we ain't heard nothing, it's time to follow up on that and maybe start working with the clients in different directions. And we have to stay on top of that, and you have to make sure your team stay on top of that if we're going to be successful in what we're doing. To assist in the process before, this is just going more into the referral process. A lot of it I've already talked about. We've been talking for a long time, so I'm just going to cut. This is more working collaborative with legal sources, making sure your staff is. I know that we have a form in the chart that we like filled out that made contact with the mandator in 7 days and kind of got their opinion on it or writing recommendations. So this is all about making sure that your counselors are doing that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? And not just going off their feelings and emotions. Couple more slides here. Function and quality indicators in embedded programs and what you should be looking at. Again, in your folder at hire, or I have made available to now, I have like a list of tools and I have different reports you can run. That's how you kind of monitor this stuff. I will be teaching you how to do that stuff. So success and AMA rates. NIDA reports success rates of 45 to 60 as a national average, and observation that appears roughly suggests stability. So if your program has a 50% success rate, you're pretty stable. If they have 50%, 55% success rate, you're doing very good. You get up 60 or higher, you're going to be doing backflips, and we're going to be like, woo, because you are doing stellar. Making sure that you and your staff or establishment support make clients feel welcome and help. It can help with retention. You know what I mean? To increases that success rate. So that kind of goes together. Like, you want to make sure that their admission assessments getting done 24 hours and people are meeting on regular, and we're checking in when they first get there. Because if you put yourself in their shoes, it can be a scary thing. They've never been in this place. They're in a strange environment. Maybe it's their first time even in a place like that. And they're like, this place is nuts. Like, you want to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So like you as a supervisor want to make sure that staff's getting that done. That you want to ensure good communication between staff and addressing issues before become problems. because it can be preventative, like so many things. If we get in front of it when it's a little thing before it snowballs into a big thing, we can prevent so much stuff. And it also like contributes to just overall keeping the integrity of our program. Ignoring things until they fester usually leads to more problems. And they can also, like, especially when we're dealing with clients, that's kind of how you see a client struggling and giving up some flares, and we ignore that. If we didn't, we might have got in front of that and turned it around, where because we ignored it at this time, this client might get frustrated because they're not feeling heard, or it might be that they're getting the wrong impression that they can keep with the negative behavior. Either way, it could lead to AMA or administrative discharge we could avoid. So you want to stay in front of that stuff too as a supervisor. It's also important that you and your staff all will know the discharge plan starts at admission. Outcomes is part of discharge plan data monitoring. So that's again goes into some reports. There's discharge details reports, there's case management sessions reports, and also, like, I'll do chart audits. And because not only do we want to make sure that stuff's getting done, we also want that scanned and attached to the charts. Insurance companies like really like it helps with payment. Oasis, they call it proof of case management. So it's not just saying, hey, we got this person to bed, it's showing that the referral went along with it. So there's no like doubting. So that's the kind of stuff is you're looking for. Those are the quality indicators in the chart. So like the 24-hour admission, the engagement early on, the making sure the stuff's scanned and attached to chart. These are quality on indicators that if you make sure they're in your charts as a supervisor, it's gonna. I wish I'd have said it sooner before I got all the stuff that I've been going over at the end here. This is what I believe. When I got to inpatient, I had no fucking idea how to run that program. So I read the regs and I figured out what needed to be done. And I kind of just focused my effort on making sure that staff got done that key compliance stuff and the minimum services, at least, that Oasis required, along with like discharge plan and case management's going on. And this weird thing happened just by focusing on it as a core. The program itself took on a life of its own and kind of became a good clinic. You know what I mean? So I really believe, like, if we monitor and we hold staff accountable for these kind of things and we make sure these things are getting done, just naturally it will cause a good program. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it. I know we get pissy with Oasis, but they made up all the rules. We would like to believe someone pulling those strings, maybe they put some thought into it. So like those things that they're saying need to be done, who knew? If you do them all, treatment can work. You know what I mean? So discharge outcomes, that data is being monitored is what I'm saying. As most clients present homeless or from environments not conducive to recovery, housing referrals and bed-to-bed transitions between their high priority in our programs. Identifying and linking to mental services when needed and appropriate. Honey eligible referrals are going out. Everybody gets psyches access, so you can run psych reports. That'll let you know eligibility. If you are unfamiliar, I can teach you how to do that. Bridge the gap. It's a AA sponsorship temporary. When they're in programs like ours or jail, they'll get a temporary sponsor assigned, and then it can pick back up. Linking to and reconnecting to primary care, and out if they're like, especially from the 820, if they have a safe home to go to and they're doing that, linking them to outpatient and MAT appointments. Making sure that clinical services are delivered and documented services accurately. So like all the compliance stuff, weekly individuals, whatever the group requirements are, core clinical brace 5 times a week, relapse prevention, addiction ed, like making sure that stuff's getting done consistently. And here I say how that we're the proof of case management scan and attached part, but all in all too, just even running the behavioral support plan, that's part of our clinical services, because by managing the client kind of nailed at the behaviors of the more difficult clients, we are maintaining safety and integrity programs. The better we make our boundaries clear, the easier the client can see them and hear them to consistency. Care policy procedures definitely persist in this area. So that's it on leadership and what's needed for a functioning better program. Again, function is the key word. You want to always make sure your programs and functioning. There's about 3 other trainings in your learning plan and LMS system that I'd like you to finish. If you're onboarding the folder you have, again, that's the tools for success document and the kind of electronic folder that I'm gonna go over with you. I have instructions on all that on how to run the common reports you need. I have a chart audit tool that you can use. I made it off the Oasis site visit tool. It doesn't really get into the environmental, fire safety and the environmental stuff like that, or building. This is the clinical part of it. So it's just a quick checklist, because if you ever looked at one, they're like 15 pages long and section off. This is just, I made like a nitty gritty one that's easy to read. There's a supervisor also training matrix that's task oriented, associated with your job. Again, if you're watching this video, you've probably been recruited from within, so you probably know how to do most things on it, but it's still just good to go over and sign off where if you identify there might be something on there you don't know, then you can ask. Last but not least, this one's a little extensive, but I do highly recommend it. In that same folder, there's a CASA Trinity Embedded Program Supervisor Operating Manual. And it kind of covers a lot of stuff we talked about today, but also in there are clear examples of forms that some of the programs use, that like the phone sign-up sheet, the delivery request, the Medicaid transfer request form, the sick call slip, and then written procedures. And it's your program, you're the director. It's not like, I do think you could just grab them and use them as is in a lot of programs, but even if it's something that don't quite fit your program, at least it'd be kind of an example that you can tweak. So with that said, I am going to end this training. I hope it was helpful. I hope you were successful in your supervisor endeavors, and I hope you have a functioning program.